Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here. Gary Sosa and I have been phoning and emailing for months to put these 2 days together and trying to really address, personalize it for here at Palomar and not just give you a blanket sort of, I'm going to yakety yak, and you go away and say, that was nice, but so what, right? So these 2 days, especially today, well, not especially today, but both days are going to be really focused on you and your needs. I do not have a set agenda. I'm not pushing anything. So I got up at 5 o'clock to come here so that I can work for you. So I want you to feel free that this is not just a lecture. This is not if I say something and you want to comment or ask a question or disagree. I want you to feel we make this a dialogue, not me for the first part of the day anyway, just kind of like yakking at you. So I really want you to see if you have a question, we can go into it. I already started here with reading and writing, talking about things. So that's what I'm here to serve you and to serve what you're doing with learning communities, and I'm really thrilled that you're doing that. So please feel free to interact with me. I'm going to talk a little bit about it at the beginning, about learning communities. Gary said there are some people who have some knowledge or some people who have sort of knowledge, and I don't know exactly who's really knowledgeable and who feels confident about what a learning community is, but what we're going to do, both sessions today are sort of train the trainer since you're here. Have that interest. You're going to look at the materials, we're going to do some exercises, and I want you to feel free to take those then when I go away so that you don't have to keep saying, well, can you come back and do this again for another group of people? You could start developing your own core group of people here that could say, oh, I went through this exercise, it's pretty easy, and there's all the written instructions, and so maybe if other faculty are interested, you could get a group of faculty together, and a couple of you could lead a workshop. So how many of you have some familiarity with learning communities? Pretty good. And some of you are just like, sounds good and I want to know more. We're going to look at today a little bit, I'm going to just talk to you a little bit about why learning communities, what they are, give you some examples of some models that work, especially at the community college. Learning communities, if you know, are not something people tend to think, well, this is the latest fad that came along, and who thought this up? Marco must have been sitting in his garage one day saying, well, what can I do? I'll come up with this idea of learning communities. This really started in the, I can even say it now, last century. Right? At the beginning of the last, I used to say at the beginning of this century, but I just thought today, at the beginning of the last century, with people like Meiklejohn and Dewey and experiments at the University of Wisconsin. So it started not at a community college or basic skills level, it started at universities where they saw that old model of sort of mechanical model of students and they weren't really learning. Everything was sort of in silos, and they wanted to do something that really brought students together and created some sort of deeper learning that crossed disciplines, that worked towards creating good citizenship. That's a very important thing, and an informed citizenry. And so this started as experiments way back then at a bunch of colleges and universities, right? The modern, what we call the modern learning community movement, really started in about the 70s up at the Washington Center, the Evergreen State University in Olympia. And there we have the four, they don't like to be told this, but the four Earth Mothers of the learning community movement. And Evergreen itself was founded as a state institution, but founded on the principles of learning communities. So everything that's offered there, students enrolled there, it's taught in learning communities, which meant they're team taught, they're interdisciplinary, they're involved with the community, they take the work out. So it's a very unique institution, especially considering it's a state institution. And so they've really promoted this, and it's spread around. But learning communities are essentially not a quick fix for any problem that a school might have. Learning communities deep down and essentially are a reform movement. It's an attempt to really reform what's going on in higher education. Okay? It's an attempt to get away from that traditional sort of mode that we have, that probably all of us went through when we went through, and get at something deeper. And so it doesn't exist in a vacuum. People say, well, I'll put a learning community here. Oh, we need to get better success or better retention and so on. So we try to do this learning community as a Band-Aid to fix it. And it doesn't work if you do that. So what you really need to do, which I think you are doing beautifully, is looking at your institution and looking at the culture and saying, where do we need to work? What do we need to do? Where is there a problem? And how do we address that? And can learning communities actually help us address that problem, whether it's in students that are at the very basic skills level that are not getting through, whether it's students who are not ever getting out of basic skills into the mainstream general education curriculum. So you want to say, is there a problem, and is there something in the institution that is a really pressing need, and can learning communities address that, and if so, how? Because there's no one way to do learning communities. There are a lot of ways, okay? So we're going to take a look at that. I'm going to apologize. Sometimes I have a PowerPoint, but I'm not really, I'm sort of a yellow pad, number 2 pencil kind of guy. So I had all of this stuff on my computer at work. So before I retired, they say, clean off your computer. So I did, dutifully, on a flash drive, right? I said, good. So she's going to go back up. No, I figured it's on the flash drive. What can go wrong? So I took it, and when I finally retired, had this laptop, put it in the laptop, and the flash drive was all corrupted. So I have not only this, but I have years of workshops that I can't access. It just sort of goes boop and won't open. So, but I do keep hard copy because I'm a real Luddite. So that's what you have, and you can sort of follow along. It's yours to keep. We're just gonna, I'm gonna refer to it once in a while, but you don't have to follow this slavishly. So I want to be more of a conversation. So the way to begin for me, because I go a lot of places and they say, we're doing learning communities. You know, we put, in the nursing department, we put 2 things together, and we took psychology and history and we put them together, and then we took auto mechanics and reading and put that together. You know, and I say, well, why? What do you do? So they have them like all over, like little dots all over the place in the curriculum. You know, and if you look at them, they sort of look like little pimples. Every once in a while, something will come, and it'll last for a semester, and then it's gone, right? And some students enroll, and so you kind of wonder, like, think about it. What would you do if you saw this pimple, right, somewhere? What do we do with pimples? Want to get rid of them, right? They're annoying, right? And so a lot of times the college and institution, I keep saying, if you do that, you sort of have all these pimples on the butt of the institution, and you just want to, like, get rid of them. Not very pretty, and they don't serve any purpose. So the first thing we want to do, right, I'm going to invite you to do this with me here, because I'm a visitor, but you live here and work here. So I want you to think for a minute and tell me, who are your students?
Tell you right off there?
Well, think for a minute. I always like people to think. I hate it when people go, here's a question they want to think for a second. Okay, students. If I had to describe students, Palomar College student profile, what could you tell me about students at Palomar? Any common characteristics? Or
Some of them are needy. Some of them
needy and
needing as like they need.
financially needy, or
Well, I think financially.
Academically?
Also academically, like sometimes they don't understand. They don't get it.
right?
So you have to explain it to them.
So they come, they don't get, the it that they don't get is what college is all about and what they're doing here. So a lot of them come without a background, without any sort of reference of college, without a culture of college, right? Which is kind of, you know, here I am, but I don't know what it is to be a college student. I have no idea, right? I have students that used to show up in class without a pen or a pencil. I said, you know, it's college, isn't it, right? Right? No, they haven't. I've only been retired a few months, so I didn't think they'd change. But, you know, so I ended up having like this little pencil thing, and they come in and take a pen. I give them a pen and say, this is yours. You can use it in every class. But yeah, they have no idea. Book, paper, pencil, pen. So if they're like that unaware of what it takes to be, just imagine what they think about the whole process, right? So yeah, there's a real disconnect. They're not really comfortable with that. Yeah.
Well, we have more women than men,
Mm-hmm.
and we have, the average age is probably under 20 or has been. With the changing demographics because of the economic situation, from a counseling perspective, we're seeing more people who are unemployed or underemployed. Most of our students do not test into transferable English or math.
Okay.
If they're high school students, they don't understand the difference between the culture of college and high.
Right. That's sort of similar. So I'm going to stop for a minute, because one of the things was really important was that they come in here like sort of not prepared academically, right? So they don't have what you would assume to be basic skills in what you do all about, in math, and in reading, and in writing, that you sort of, I hear that all the time. Faculty go, well, how do they get through high school? And how do they get here? And how do they survive in life, you know? They really have a difficult time with those, what we would consider sort of basic, fundamental academic skills to survive. So not only are they not aware of what's going on or why they're here in college and how this whole college thing works and what it is, I always call it studenthood, what it really means to be a student, but they don't have the other skills, right? And, yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say something that I think is really common. It's common when I was in college students, is they really don't know what their own values are yet and what they want out of life, or much less out of college.
Right. That's a very, but they can't really make a connection between, I'm in English, I'm in history, I'm in math, and how does this connect to my life? What we assume is you're taking this class because you know it's important, and we all see the importance of it, and what it means to them, and why they need to take that for a better life, but they don't have a clue. They just know that it was on a list and they have to take it, and I'll do whatever I need to get through, but how it connects to my life, right, and what's going to do, we assume it's there, but it's just not. Yeah. Martin?
For many of them, college happens to be one of the several things that they're doing, but it's not necessarily the focus.
Right. I think that's really common. They've got other things. They're in college, but they've got, well, now they're unemployed maybe, but before they were working 20 to 40 hours a week, and they have a family maybe that they have to take care of. Right? If not their own family, then their extended family or whatever. So they've got all sorts of, they've got a job. So college just is one of the things in my life, right? It's not, I'll do it and I'll get through it, but Sheila, you had your hand up.
I posed a question amongst the group last semester. If they were able to get financial aid, would they work fewer hours in order, financial aid was actually supporting their academic goal? And they said no.
No.
They just get the extra money.
They need the money. They need the money, yeah.
The money is the group.
Sue?
I guess one thing I feel that there's a major disconnect is I see them as not prepared for college. They see themselves as prepared. They do.
Mm-hmm.
They have a high school diploma.
Right.
They're prepared.
And why should the adjustment from high school to college be that great to them?
Right. They don't perceive that. Because it goes back to what we said at the beginning, their sense of what being in college is all about and what you're supposed to do while you're here and what the goals are just isn't there. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I come from an off-campus branch in Fallbrook, and our population is different from just about everybody I've heard so far. Ours is mostly an immigrant population from Central America. They work at menial jobs with low income. They're very family-oriented. They're very tied up in their culture. They're very church-oriented. They'll often give priority to their churches rather than their classes. They do have some strong values. I think they're very dedicated, most of them, to doing classwork whenever they have the time. Most of them don't have the time, and I have to spend about roughly a third of my time reviewing previous lessons because the absentee rate is so high.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's related to what Martin said, is that this is just one other thing they have, but it's not necessarily their priority, and they're certainly not, I mean, think about when you went to college or university, right? How many people were full-time students? Probably almost everybody was full-time student, right? And maybe you went to one and you lived in a dorm, and so it was not only being in classes, but you lived on the university, you went to clubs, you went to functions, so you had a different, here it's like they're all commuting, they're in, they're out, and then they're out. Right? So this is just one more stop during the day. Grocery shopping, work, whatever, college, get a class, get 2 classes, off I go again. Right? And what Ken was saying is very true. I'm assuming here, but it didn't come up. Most community colleges have a really, not only a range of underpreparedness academically, but sort of underrepresented groups that typically have not been in college before, right? A lot of them are, they're the first one in the family maybe has gone to college, and maybe not with support. Maybe they really have to fight, why do you need to go to college? I don't see, aren't you out working? And so they don't have a peer group necessarily that supports them. Their friends might not be in college, they're all working. So for them, this is maybe the first in their family to ever even try to do this, and they're doing it alone. They can't go home when the family says, that's wonderful, you're going to college.
Well, the one thing that I see, I think because I do so many basic skills classes, is that they are afraid. We may see it as them being uninterested or not prepared, but they are afraid. They think we're not on their side, and they don't think that we're going to support them either.
So they feel a real sense of being alone.
And this is the one thing in their life that's scarier than anything else they do.
Okay. Okay, we're going to quickly finish up, and then we're going to take a...
I think an underlying thing that's actually related to all of those, in particular to yours, is like that lack of vocabulary that sometimes threatens to unravel all of our efforts. Actually, that one sometimes doesn't know what to actually understand what you say.
That's that,
sometimes
right.
the vocabulary is so limited, and I'm not talking about ESL students.
No, just basic,
Yeah.
basic level of preparedness for higher education.
Well, we have that population, but I think we could, at least in my experience, we have the kids coming from high school who are here for a variety of reasons. Maybe they didn't get into a four-year school, but more often it's parents will say, well, you go to college or you can work, and they come to college, they don't have any clear purpose. And then we have the reentry students who are very motivated because they've been out there, they know their options are. But I think it's that population of high school kids that we need to give them some kind of purpose. You know, either they go out and work a while, go to McDonald's, work a couple semesters, and come and see, okay, those are their options, because they don't really see it. They're still living at home.
Right,
they get a
right,
nice cushion.
So, okay, so that's a pretty good profile of students here, right? Generally, we covered a lot of bases. Now I want you to think for a second before we even start talking about learning communities. If they go into what you all experience as an environment of traditional instruction, traditionally in college, what do we expect? What's their priority? Kids going to Stanford or Princeton or Berkeley or UC San Diego, what's their priority? School. We expect, if you go into higher education, that school is your #1 priority, right? Which we just saw, not necessarily. What else? Traditional education. They know what it means to be, they know how to study, they know how to learn, they know what, they buy the books, they come with paper, they've actually read the lesson, they know how to study and what that is involved, right? They have basic academic skills. If you're going to Berkeley, well, they're going to assume that, right? You can read, you can write, you can compute, you can do all those basic skills. You're at college level, ready to begin college, right? And that you know why you're there. A lot of these students in a traditional college, and you get in there within a year. Now it used to be like, after you finish your sophomore year, you had to declare a major. Not anymore. It's like when you go in, before you even get in, I'm going to this school because this is what I'm interested in, and you have to declare. My youngest went to George Washington, but she knew she was going there because there was the Elliott School of International Studies, and that's what she was going to do. So to get into that school as a freshman, before you did anything, you already had to be sort of tracked. You had to know what you were doing. So that's, it's a very different thing. So just think about who your students are and what the traditional educational, higher educational experience assumes about those students, right? And then, since that's one disconnect, and then we put them in an environment where it's sort of this like Ford Motor Company thing. They come in, you have to take 50-unit classes 3 times a week, then you have tests and you get grades, and it's about GPA, and the teacher will say, you sit there and be quiet and shut up and take notes, and the teacher will tell you everything you have to know, and then you take a test, and then you get out of that class and you go to the next class, and if you have your little form of all the required courses, you can fill in all your requirements, and eventually you'll get so many units, and you'll get out with a GPA, and that's what it's all about. Right? It's all this bureaucracy, it's all this administrivia of that's what school is, and I go from class to class to class, right? And so if they're afraid, and what? They're taking tests, and who are they competing against? They work individually. They work individually, and their goal is what? To learn? No. What's the goal? Get the units, get an A on the test. Right? I need a B minus. That's all I need. You gave me a C. Could you give me a B minus? Just raise it half the thing. Why? Right? It's not because I really want to learn this stuff. It's because I need the grades, I need the units, I need the GPA. Right? So it becomes to this little sort of very mechanical type of thing that students really don't have a sight of really what we would like to think of while you're here. I know none of you think of going to college, coming to Palomar, is all about units and GPA and grades and fulfilling requirements. That's not how you view it. You have this view of you're becoming a better educated person, a better citizen, you're understanding yourself and your place in the world and all of this stuff. But the system doesn't support that. And so the result is exactly what we see. Students come in, they're afraid, they don't have any support, they don't understand what's going on, they take these classes, they don't know why they're in them, they don't get the grades, they don't have the skills, they drop out. Because if you drop out by such and such a week, you won't get a bad grade, so it won't affect your GPA. And then you re-enroll, right? Or you try another teacher, the same class, because maybe that way it'll be easier, right? And you go and look at Rate My Professor, and get the ones that are really easy A's, and you go back in. And so after a while, it becomes this sort of revolving door, and after they've spun around 2 or 3 times and have taken math, I don't know the number here, but math 100, whatever it is, 3 times and have failed, right? Pre-algebra, and they can't get through it, they're out. Forget it, this is not for me, I can't be a college student, right? And so there's not a fit, there's not a fit. And so part of what Learning Communities is trying to do is to address, specifically in community colleges, who are those students and how can we build a system that will support them, right? And so Learning Communities will focus on the idea of studenthood. So we're not just teaching English or math or history or psychology or whatever you teach, ESL. We're teaching students how to be students and what that involves. We're providing them with an environment of support. We're giving them skills so that they can learn, they will know how to learn by themselves so that it can continue without being so dependent on the teacher. Okay? So we're providing all of these sort of support things as well as the content of the classes that we're doing. And we're helping them see connections by putting classes together. We're helping them develop a community. We assume that they have a community, but most of them don't. So we're building a community right there in the classroom so that students can learn to work with one another, to help one another, to get support from one another, right? And that's the idea. So learning and communities, a lot of people think, well, learning is good, community is good. If I put them both together, they're double good, right? Without any idea of what that means. Our chancellor, who is a friend from a long time ago, and she was president at De Anza, when Learning Communities were just sort of getting the word was coming to California about what this thing was, and we had some people come down from the Washington Center, and she decided she was going to reorganize the college. So very briefly, she took, the traditional kind of college, organizational chart, and she reorganized us all. So we were all in circles that overlapped. So there was language arts and fine arts and I forget what else, creative arts, and so that sort of fit together, And then there was sciences and math, and that fit together. But that was about it. Because then we got things like counseling, PE, and auto tech, and where did that go? Well, they became another community out here. So we had all of these circles. And then in the middle was the administration. Right? And so she promoted this and went around talking about how this was learning communities. Because there was learning going on, because we were a college, and she formed these communities, right? But the departments and everything was the same underneath that. It was just this big, and I just choked. I said, Martha, you can't do that. Because people were coming to me and said, I understand all of De Anza is learning communities, right? We didn't have a single learning community as academically, curriculum, right? It was just this thing. It only lasted 2 years because we all didn't like each other. So we all went back to our own little boxes, and that was fine. I'm in this line under this guy, that's fine, okay. But, so you'll hear all sorts of things. People will tell you that they have learning communities. You just have to take it, really, what is that? Tell me about what you mean when you say that. So what we mean, I'm going to skip some of these because it's here for you to read. What we mean when we're talking about learning communities, and we talked about studenthood. These aren't even numbered, right? We know that they're successful. You don't have to sit here and prove to anyone. You can look at the data all around at colleges that have been doing it, that students tend to be successful. They stay in school. They go progress towards a degree. They have a real sense of what they're doing. So when we're here, there's a definition here of learning communities that you can read. I'm not going to read it to you. right? But it is a whole bunch of approaches. There are lots of ways we can do that. The elements are classes are linked or clustered around a theme, and that's real important. I'm going to drill that into you for the next 2 days. So we are actually restructuring curriculum, we're restructuring students' time, we're restructuring the way students interact with instructors, the way they interact with each other, right? And so when we talk about learning communities, I would say, here are the basics. Without this, you don't have a learning community. The same cohort of students is enrolled in all the classes, which means if there's 25 students are in the reading, 25 students are in the English. If there's more, those 25 are in the math. You can't have some people that, I'm only taking the reading part, or I'm only taking the math part, right? And so those students are enrolled together in all the courses, and that becomes the cohort, and they stay together, right? Now this is like, well, why is he like, this thing, is that a rule? Where was it written? The experience has shown, and we've had that experience, we've had so many flops and disasters. Over lunch, I could tell you horror stories that would just make you cringe. And you say, Dianza, how stupid could you be, right? We've had that, where we've let some students come in and they were in one class but not the other, right? And it ended up, the whole learning community just was a horrible experience for everybody, and it didn't work. And so this is not me, but nationally they find that. So the same cohort of students, and we hear that all the time. Can students take one or the other? What happens if they want to drop one of the classes? Can they drop one of the classes and stay in the other? And so some people, there were some administrations and some groups of counselors and whatever that say, oh, I can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. It's important to get your administration on board so that, yes, that's what it is. We're saying that. They can't. They drop one, they drop everything. It's a unit, and we need students to be like that. The other thing is that there's a theme. It's not just having students scheduled in English at 9:30 and reading at 10:30, even if it's the same group of students. They won't necessarily see that. So what we're saying is, what it's incumbent upon the faculty is to develop those classes around a central theme, around a question, around an issue that would engage the students, and that's really important. What we call, when students are just sort of co-enrolled, they're in one class in the same group, that's co-enrollment. And Barbara Lee Smith calls it like learning communities light, right? The students are there, and the faculty member teaches at 9:30, and then the faculty member teaches at 10:30, but the faculty members don't coordinate anything. There's no theme, there's no integration of any assignments. All you have is the students that are moving from one class to the other, the same group. It's not a learning community. It has to be a theme. The learning communities are team designed so that both faculty have input into designing what's going to happen, and we're going to work on that this afternoon with the assignments, etc. And a lot of times they're team taught. Now this is a question of logistics and it's of finances, but what I'm saying is at least if you have the 2 classes, the 3 classes, there is at least some time during the week when students see teachers together. It doesn't mean you have to spend the whole period together, but there's some sort of an overlap. And if you're doing this taught in a block, so if Abby's teaching at 9:30, is that a good time for you? And who else is here? And, let's see, Susan's teaching at 10:30. Your schedules are coordinated so that sometime you can be in her class. So you don't have a 10:30, you don't have a 9:30 class and you don't have a 10:30 class. So that sometime you can at least visit the class. Or you could come in, she could come in the last 10 minutes of your class and stay, and you'd stay the first 10 minutes of the other class. Right? And so when there's the break, students would get a chance to see both of you together and if they had any questions. So there's some time every week that faculty get together, right, in the classroom and outside the classroom to do the planning, right? And that's essential. And the fourth has to do with pedagogy, which we're going to deal with a lot when I come back in 2 weeks, whatever that is the pedagogy is generally a collaborative, experiential type of pedagogy, active learning type of pedagogy, so that students work a lot in groups. Students learn to be responsible for their own learning. Students teach each other, And so there's a really big emphasis on that type of pedagogy rather than, and I'm not saying that a lecture is bad, but rather than consistently just straight lecture. So the teacher, as seen as that, you know that old saying, the sage on the stage? I have all the answers, I have all the wisdom, and ooh, if you sit there, I'll impart it to you, and you just take notes and take the test. The teacher's role changes from that to a guide on the side. You set up environments, you set up exercises, you set up situations in which students really take responsibility for their learning, work together in groups, teach each other. And so the faculty role changes considerably in a learning community. And it often looks like sort of semi-controlled chaos. And I've had a lot of times other people walk by and, you know, students are in groups and they're working and they've got this problem and they're working together, and I'm sort of going around watching what they're doing and guiding them. But essentially, you can't go out for, you know, I'll see you later, go out and get a cup of coffee. That's not it. You're still there, but they're saying like, what's going on? Like, you know, your class is so noisy. All the students are talking together and they're working in groups and they're all discussing this. I go, yeah, right? Because they don't want to see that. The students should be quiet and I should be the one talking, like now. Right? So those are what we see as kind of like essential qualities for learning communities. Make sense? Okay. So anything that doesn't have that, I would kind of question like, learning community? Really? And say, tell me how that works. So there's a few models that we've discovered work really well. I'm trying to go so we actually get a break and get into the activity. A few models that really work, and you have them here, so I don't want to read it to you, okay? The first, the simplest, what you probably think of is what we call linked or paired courses. That's generally 2 courses, because when you do more than 2, it gets really logistically difficult. Now, we've tried it, and sometimes it works, but generally 2 courses, maybe 3. Okay, and they're linked together, so the same students in both classes. The faculty coordinate their syllabi, they work on an assignment together. Occasionally they'll teach together, maybe they'll visit once in a while each other's classes, maybe plan a joint lesson once in a while, once every other week or something, right? And so this is really typical when you get a reading course or a writing course that's linked to a general education course or a math course to a science course or something like that. This is a really, really common thing. And you have some models of that. This sort of speaking or live, that you have history and public speaking, and you can see, you know, it's back to back, the block schedule. There were 2 instructors and 35 students. Instructors weren't present in each other's class all the time, but occasionally they were. But they did a lot of the planning and the assignments together, so students could see that obviously the teachers have talked to one another, right? Here's another one. It was sociology and statistics. Again, right? It was society, go figure. It wasn't the most successful thing the first time around, so it took a lot of tweaking. Because put an English course with something else sometimes works easier. But this was really hard for them to do, right? They had to work really hard so that it wasn't all one-sided. It seemed like it was all sociology, and then the math was just supporting that. So how do we make that seem more that it's really integrated? Gabe?
You find that some subject links are more successful than others? Like you mentioned, you know, linking sociology with a statistics class versus counseling class with a math class. Do you find that some of those pairs?
Some are, I think, easier to see where. Usually a writing course, you know, so people say that you know, writing is what, there is content in writing in an English writing course, but you can write about a lot of things on a theme, right? So you could sort of easier, more transparent to develop that than perhaps linking statistics and sociology. That gets to be, so that it's not just seen as a one-way link, that we're learning sociology and here's the statistics that you need to know, but that you actually see how it's integrated. That was more of a, some of them were more challenging to do, okay? The last one is that, you know, sometimes there are all these logistics. This was a really difficult thing because we had different numbers. So sometimes the class numbers are different, you know? So they had 50 students in this literature class, and they wanted to combine it with a, well, what they call a reading writing, right? We have a thing called LART, L-A-R-T, like language arts, and it's reading and writing combined. It's already in a package of units, okay? So what they did is have to do 2 sections of the LART, of the reading writing, and then all of those students went into the literature section. So if you see down below, there was a section of the reading writing, then there was the literature, then there was another section of the reading writing. So the same teacher taught the reading, writing, and the other teacher taught the literature. And so but they had it blocked out so that they could go back and forth. And every once in a while, they brought everybody together. This was a bit more tricky, right? A little more tricky to handle. So that's sort of the basic. It works. It works really easily, and that's the most common thing you'll hear people talk about, links, right? And a lot of learning community, like our learning program, is called the LINC program, L-I-N-C, right, for learning in communities. So that's really common to talk about links. The other one is a kind of strange one. We found that there are some times when we just can't do that. We don't have, it's not 25 and 25. It just doesn't work out. And so what we have is a large history class or a large intro to psych class, which maybe have 100 or 200 or 300 students in one of these theaters. And we want to link it with, say, an English writing course or something like that. Well, there's no way that we can do that. And so we have this cohort model where what you find is there is a cohort, 25 students that are in the English class. All of those enroll in the history class. So in the history class, those 25 have another 75 students sitting around them. So the link, the cohort, that becomes the learning community, those 25 students. And you'll see it in the models. Okay? It's really important then that, this is really critical, that the, whatever it is, history teacher be present in the English class. And that the English teacher go to the history lectures. Right? Because then you can design the assignments, and so a lot of times they see that when the history teacher comes into the English, then you have all of this two teachers together, and it just really is very effective, okay? You'll see some models of this, and this is our times and our, oh no, wait a second, wrong way. Oh, this is one of my favorites, This was the ESL class, upper level ESL class, and a US history class called Whose Country Is This Anyway? Rewriting America's History. So here's a good example of how they developed a theme. Well, I forget what the history with it, and it was the whole series, you know, from 18 whatever it was up to whatever history does. You know, there's the basic history whole year sequence. Okay, it could be either one. They said we're dealing with ESL students, people, immigrants who have come from a different culture, have all these facing, you know, new culture here. But isn't that a thing, like all of America, no matter how far back you look, has been an idea of people coming and immigration and assimilation and all this acculturation. I mean, that's been a whole process if you look at this country of all the groups who have come. So that's kind of like a theme. He said, and we don't look at that. And so they really said they're going to rewrite history, and they're going to focus, even though they covered the material, they're going to be focusing on rewriting that and looking at the history of the United States from an immigrant experience, a lot of from people of color, right? And so it's not that they covered what they had to in history, but the focus was different, and that theme was different. And it was especially resonated with ESL students who readily identified their current experience and could look back in the history and see that other groups during history had that same experience. So they could really identify with that, and they did all sorts of wonderful things with that. And this is one that's been going on for years and years. It just fills automatically. I mean, it's fillable for anything else, right?
So this is at the answer?
Yeah, that was one that was at the answer. Some of these are from other places, but that one was the answer. Here you can see another one here. We've done the same thing with a humanities class and an English writing class. And so these 25 students are the cohort, right? And the teachers go into each other's classes. So that's kind of a interesting way to do that. If you have a big class and you want to put up a skills class with that, or an English class or something smaller. Okay, the last of these is what we consider, people look at really real learning communities, although they're not any more real than anything else. Right? And this is where you get 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 classes that are really team taught. And they're totally integrated. So you have students in there, you have the teachers there all the time, you have the same students all the time, and there's a real blurring of boundaries between the two disciplines. I know we just started one, it was called Mind Control Persuasion. It was a psychology class and a oral communications class, speech class. Right? And they focused on that, the whole idea of persuasion and media influence and everything else, and how that went, government and that. And I go in and do sort of wrap sessions with the students, see how things are going, and they say, you know, the bad thing, because both teachers were there all the time, and the assignments were integrated, so they didn't know, was this a speech assignment or a psychology assignment, because, you know, they could talk about anything when they're doing their, and so the one thing they say, you know, is that we can't figure out when we're doing speech and when we're doing psychology, because both teachers are here. So we could ask a speech question of the psychology teacher, or something in psychology we could ask the speech teacher, and we can't figure out what's what. And I said, well, is that bad? They said, no, it's just we can't figure out what's what. Right? They wanted to be able to say, now it's psychology and now it's speech. And so one of the markers of success is when students can't figure out where that line is. And so here's some examples here where you could put history of Mexico and a cinema. Right, both teachers would be there. Computer science and political science. I haven't gotten the curriculum on all of these. This last one was one of our worst disasters in history. We tried to put 4 classes together. All communication, speech class, reading and writing, and then a lab. It was a disaster. What? It just couldn't get, you had all the teachers, and the teachers couldn't get together. If you imagine how hard it is to find a time when 2 teachers can get together during the week, try to manage to find 4 teachers when they have a chance to want to get together once a week. It just, you know, teachers, they weren't really willing to do that, so it just didn't work that well. Just didn't work that well.
It never really got off the ground then.
No, it went the whole quarter. Just, you know, when we got the feedback, it wasn't really successful. We probably said if we did it again, we'd probably have to be a bit more selective about who it is was teaching, and the fact that are you really committed to making an hour a week that you're all going to get together, and not tell me that, well, your kid has to go here, or have to go to the dentist, or have this or that, that you really have. It takes a huge commitment to get 4 people to meet once a week and do planning. So, and I know I'm saying that in the fact that you're planning learning communities that are going to have reading, writing, math, and counseling, right? This was one of the beginning ones, and so that's what we learned, that when those people come together, it's just like, oh, I want to teach that. That you have to maybe be selective and say, okay, you will teach that, but this is what goes along with it. And if you're not willing to make that commitment, then maybe this isn't the best thing for you to get involved in with something that big. And we'll talk about that later when we're actually talking about what you're doing here. So those are sort of an overview. Those models are the ones you find most common. As you start with those, you notice that first one also was a lot. It was 30 students and 4 teachers. And we wanted teachers to be in each other's classes. And so after a while, that got really old for the teachers because they're not getting any extra pay. So I'm doing all of this extra work and planning, and I'm just getting credit for teaching 1 class, right? And so that was at the beginning stage. We have evolved, I mean, with a lot of hard work and effort, where now a lot of the learning communities at De Anza are these team-taught things, but they're double enrolled. So instead of having 30 students in a class, we have 60 students in a class. So teachers actually get credit for teaching 2 sections, and they teach 2 sections. And so it's double like that. So we have those now that have very, very popular. Very popular. The faculty love it because they're there all the time and they get to work with another faculty member. Students love it because they have both teachers there all the time and they're in this big block. And so it works out really well. And that takes a little more logistics because you have to worry about a room. Where do I have a room for 75 or 80 students that I can have them all together, and then I can split them apart? And so a lot of times they do that. So some days they're split apart into smaller groups, and some days they're all together in the big group. So logistically, for whoever is going to be coordinating this program, that can be a real challenge. And institutionally, you have to have someone that's going to be able to get you the room and get you to block that room out for so many hours. So that's generally not at the beginning. That comes after time, and you can build towards that. So, okay. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Basic Learning Communities 101?
The idea of having the teachers share time in the classroom with each other, is it just that the students see the 2 teachers together? Or
Yes.
Okay, so in theory then that could actually take place outside of a classroom as well, right? If there was something like, I'm thinking
Field trip.
okay.
Yeah, if there's a field trip, both faculty would go. But it's really important, and I didn't even mention yet, the fact that we have counselors attached to this. So we have a counselor for the learning communities, as you do. So it's important for them, for students. Yes, when you think about, students don't get it. We get it. I get it, right? I know that it's all coordinated, but they don't get it. They got to see. They have to see both teachers for at least a little bit standing in front of the class, being together, so that if they have, and having a counselor there. A lot of times what happens is in the last 10 minutes of the first class and the first 10 minutes of the second class, there's a 10-minute break in there. Everybody's there. And so students will go on break, but that's a time for them to catch the counselor that they never got to see. Or that's the time to ask a question of one teacher that they didn't get beforehand, so, or talk about something. And it's a time when teachers can get together and talk about it. If they have an assignment, we're going to work on that later this afternoon. An assignment in common that both teachers are there so they can answer questions together. But yeah, that's important for students to see that, because we talked about the type of students we have, so we get it, but they don't necessarily get it until they can physically see that both teachers are together and are friends and talk to each other and know each other. And students are very quick to pick up on that. That's the one thing I ask. They say, well, they have the two teachers, they're nice, but they don't seem to be talking, they don't seem to know what the other one's doing. They pick up on that like that, right? Yes?
Okay, can I ask for some examples of how math and English courses are going to work together in terms of theme, in terms of joint assignments, in terms of...
That's, you know, I didn't bring it with me, but we have developed a year-long sequence. Let me explain it real quickly. It's the beginning reading. So the first class is, I don't have a pen here, reading, and it's the lowest level math. So reading and the lowest level math, which is what, like arithmetic or something like that, right? No, these, yeah.
I come prepared.
So it's going to be reading and arithmetic, right? And then it goes to, or I guess this is like pre-algebra, is that what they call it? Then there's beginning algebra and intermediate algebra. And this is done with reading, and then this is done with one level below college level. So let's say it's called English Comp, I don't know the number that they give it, 50, okay. And then this would be English Comp, English like 1A, college level. Okay, so this, and there's a counselor with all of these. And so they've developed this so that they move together through that. And so I can bring you examples of the types of assignments that they've done. We did this the first time, and it wasn't very successful. But it was so, you know, some successful, but not completely successful. The counselor wasn't really integrated into this. And so he would come and do this thing about, here we're talking about students in reading and pre-algebra, and he's talking about the requirements for transfer to UC. You know, he was like, didn't work really well. So they were still struggling. That's a hard thing to do. So they were picking out texts. I know they'd read, I read it too, and I can't remember the name of it. But there are books that deal with math that they would read, yeah. So they would, instead come up with, I'll get you for next time. I'll see if I can get some examples of the assignments. But the first time it was really a struggle. So, but they thought it was worthwhile, so they went away for 2 days. The counselor and all these people together, not only but the reading and this, if just this English teacher happened to be a math major. So it just worked out. She knew a lot about math. So, and the first teacher we had in the math really didn't get learning communities. So she figured, well, I'll be here, I'll do my stuff, and I'm not going to hang around. So we completely disinvited her to participate the second time and found someone else. But they got together, and the second time it was immensely successful. They just tweaked it. I don't have them right off the tip of my head, but I can get them for you. See, but it is a challenge. It's a challenge of saying, because it's easy to, I mean, they wrote about math things, and then I'd have to see some of the assignments they did. But they really had to work hard. That's a really hard thing to do. And I admire you. It's a challenge to do it at this level, especially if you're adding more than just the reading. If you're doing a reading, writing, and math, that's a real challenge to.
So English 10 and math. You know, English 10 has these extended paragraphs they write in some short
Thanks.
But they're all almost all very personal experience oriented. I mean, totally see. My
Not even
first-
got their
my
math.
first-
Magic experience, yeah.
I hate
Three
reasons never to take math.
I got you. I got you.
Well, we gotta come up with the theme.
And I can see also journaling about your feelings about math.
Oh, no, I don't wanna see
Tie
that.
in.
I know what that's.
Sonia, yes.
I have a question. So how many math instructors do we have?
Gonna need a second.
How many math instructors? 2? We have 2 math instructors?
And I think the second question would be,
3?
like, in math classes, are we writing essays about mathematicians now?
No.
So like, for instance.
There's no time.
There's no time.
No.
Is that
That's not what they, not, I really, I'm going to admit that I don't know. I didn't teach it. I work with them, but I'll see what I can do between now and in 2 weeks to come back with some examples of assignments that they did. Because that's the crux of it. How do you make that so it's not just connect? Where do you make that connection, and what sort of theme do you do around it? Yeah.
Yeah, I know when I took math in high school and college, we had so many word problems, and to me it seems like that's a very easy way to integrate English. because-
Well, it is. That's why they started with the reading, because that's one of the basic things is like.
15, the word problems are like one sentence. That's really not.
But the math people said that the reading was critical, that they needed, students couldn't read. Well,
We need someone to help them learn how to read instructions.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
That's what the reading teacher does. Yeah, it's reading. Bruce?
I was not terribly good at math. But I always thought if an instructor would say, okay, sit down and write out how you would go about doing this problem. To me, that would be an excellent exercise. How did you get to this answer? Write it out in a paragraph.
Yeah, that's a lot of.
You can see whether or not that individual.
It's the same critical thinking. The math teacher and the reading, it's the same idea of critical thinking in both. That joins them together. Not necessarily that they're so, but it's not the necessary kind, but it's that critical thinking skill that you need to be able to read critically and understand, and to look at a problem and understand it and know how to. So that's what I think is what the joined them really together. And there's so many hands. I'm just going to start. I know you've had your hand up, and I don't remember your name.
From a counseling perspective, not only do we prepare students academically, but career-wise, and I know that I talk to a lot of young people, and they have a phobia about math. And one of the things that they talk about is, I cannot understand why I need this. How is it going to apply to life?
Right.
And I'm sure math teachers get it, but partly for the counseling piece of it is coming in or working with the math instructors on how to have more practical applications that relate to career paths, and why is this important, and get them excited about, okay, this is a math problem and this is how you can use it, on a day-to-day practical level, and apply it that way. So I mean, from a counseling perspective, we do academic, but we also do.
Yeah, the last sequence in this with the counseling was career planning. At the end of the.
And I mean, counselors can kind of work with anybody to kind of make it work, so.
Yeah.
I have tons of practical applications. How to put a fence around your yard, how to buy carpeting, how to, you know what they say? I'll ask the contractor.
But they don't want to be chewed by that contract.
Oh, they don't care?
Okay. Yes, Steve.
I just want to say one thing, that I think as long as we approach what we're doing next semester, really, we're wearing this like a light jacket. We're not wearing like a straight jacket, and it's not going to be like, at least this would be my vision of it. This is not, oh my God, we got to do all this extra work. We're going to, if we can be just as flexible as possible, it'll be fine. And we'll all teach our classes, and people will, and approach it like, this will be kind of interesting and fun, and if it gets to be a pain in the neck, we back off. I mean, it's just...
No, you have to be flexible in the fact that almost any time people go out and start a learning community, it's brand new, faculty haven't worked together, some of it will go well, and some of it won't be so great. You just have to accept that. And that's why when we have faculty doing it, they're required to sign up and teach it at least 3 times. They come back and they say, okay, what worked well, what didn't work well, let's sit down, we'll tweak it, like that statistics and sociology. The second time it was really, really good. And they could see from the students. The same thing with this. This is really hard. And you're out there in uncharted waters trying to feel your way along. after you've done it, you can go back and say what worked, what do we want to change, what type of assignments and stuff, and how do we want to integrate the counseling better. So the second time, you know, so you have to give yourself that flexibility and allow yourself not to be absolutely perfect, you know, the first time out. This is, you're doing stuff that you haven't done before, and it's hard work. It is hard work, but that you want to try it and see what works, and then be able to come back and tweak it and change whatever you need to change.
Yeah, and I don't think the idea is for the students to be writing in the math class or to be doing math in English class, but to support what's happening in each classes. And I can see very easily in a counseling class when students are whining about their math for us to say, okay, well look, you know, two of the most popular majors are business and psychology. Economics is going to be required for business. And Math 60 is now going to be a prerequisite for that class. So if you want to be a business major, then you need to suck it up, and we need to work together to find out how we're going to help you pass math, right? And then for psychology, they require a research class. That research class requires English 100, it requires statistics, and psychology 100. So you're not going to get your bachelor's degree in psychology until we help each other move past Math 60. So that's a conversation that can easily happen.
Could happen, yeah. It is interesting, you know. So, like, you know, the reading, that's the reading teacher does teach them. So you look, how do you look for critical ideas, main ideas, what keywords, that type of thing is what you need in a math problem. Is how you look for what's essential, what do I need to know, you know. And so that they're both working on those skills, not necessarily that they're writing compositions about math, necessarily. Process, right? So I want to give you, yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say about reading. I teach writing classes, and mostly, but reading is so critical. And I've been working on becoming a better reading teacher because I figured out that my students can't write or do math if they can't read, if they don't have the academic vocabulary to understand what they're reading and their word problems, and even simple words like examine. Some of the ESL students have no idea what that means if they have a question that says examine this or analyze that. They don't understand that. So when I think about reading being a basic skill, I think about them having that vocabulary. And where they come from, their backgrounds, they haven't had those literate conversations. They have very low literacy skills. So what is common for us, having discussions about understanding or words, they don't have that.
Yeah.
So I think
Even the concept of what do you think?
When I think about reading, I don't think reading a passage, but
No.
learning how to having the skills
Exactly.
to the work in content classes.
Okay, I want to give you a chance for a break. We're a little bit behind, but I do want you to do this exercise because all of this theoretical stuff and all the stuff we're talking about, we're going to do an exercise in which you are going to pair up with someone and you're actually going to design in an hour a learning community. Show you how easy it is to do. We're going to do a little exercise in which you are going to design a learning community. You have the instructions here, okay? My only caveat to you is that we are so entrenched in that I teach English 50A and English 72B. That is what I do. Okay? I want you to forget for a second. This is a very freeing experience. Forget for a second what it is you teach, because we have a lot of English teachers and ESL teachers, so, you know, 2 English teachers are not going to do cross-disciplinary or something, so forget it. You went through, that's not the only thing you know is English or ESL or math, right? You know a lot of things. You studied all sorts of, you have all sorts of interests, so set your mind free. You are no longer at Palomar. You don't have to worry about that this is the course I teach, and it transfers as this, or that I have to link it with something else and it'll transfer. You have the ability to create a learning community around a theme or a topic that you think would be interesting to explore for a whole semester with a group of students and another faculty member. People at Stanford do not they teach a lot of learning communities. 2 faculty get together, they have this common theme, they can explore it from both their perspectives, they'll look at the king plays of Shakespeare, and you have an English teacher, literature teacher, and a historian, and a psychologist. And they're going to look at those plays as the psychologist from the psychology of the characters, a historian from how accurate, whatever it was, the history of the period, and the English teacher from literature. They have a class in the Old Testament and New Testament, historian and the English. They look at the Old Testament and New Testament from historical perspective, from a literary perspective, right? Draws a lot of controversy sometimes. But they don't worry about, gee, will that be articulated with Palomar? They don't have to worry about that at all. They have the freedom to create a theme or a topic and then put some courses together that would go with that theme or topic and then decide what would we add there, what topics would we cover, maybe what books would we use, right? Okay, so that's where you are today. You're going to have that ability to create that learning community on any theme or topic. It doesn't have to be something that you presently teach. It shouldn't be, because we're never going to get all these English teachers together. And you don't have to worry about logistics, because I've taken care of it. I've taken care of that you're getting all the pay you deserve. The rooms are done. The students will be enrolled. It's been advertised. You don't have to worry about any of that. You just have to be the creative seeds that come up with that learning community. Okay? All agree? Okay. So I'm going to give you some pens, some paper. I'll come around. What I need to do is get you in groups of 2, no more than 3. And I don't care how you group yourself. Usually we go with, let's get the history with the English, you know, so. But try to keep no 2 math people together, so to spread your set out. I can't say that for English because there would be nobody here. So, but keep in mind, you're not going to think necessarily about English, okay? So just get together with 2 or 3 people in groups of 2 or 3. I'll come around, and once you're sitting there, while I'm getting the paper in, this is what I want you to do. I just want you to think. Don't have to talk, you don't have to decide anything. Think about, if you had this opportunity, which I am now giving you, what theme might interest you? What topic might interest you that you would want to explore? What are the issues? What questions? Just think for yourself. What are things that really would be interesting? Maybe it's something in the environment. Maybe it has something to do with culture or multiculturalism, or it could be politics. There must be things that interest you. What theme would you like to do? How could you develop that, okay? And that's all I want you to do. What 2 or 3 courses would you want to bring into that if I were going to talk about politics? If I were going to talk about environmental science, if I wanted to deal with some issue in the community, right? What courses might help contribute to that, okay? You might come up with 1 theme or 2 themes. Just give yourself a few minutes. And I'll do this, okay? So you'll get maybe about 5 minutes to think about that, 10 minutes. Just think by yourself. Who needs this? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I don't.
Could you pass that back? You have a question?
So we don't have to worry about curriculum committee?
No curriculum committees, no curriculum approval, nothing. These chairs move,
Okay.
and your butts are not glued to the chairs. So move them so that you actually are working with a partner or partners and look like a group. And that way I'll know how to give you the paper and the pens. No, you can get into a group, and then the first thing you're going to do is get into your group so we get rid of the commotion. And then just think. Or the economy. Or so now give each other a time to think. The quicker you get into a group, the quicker you can think. Probably both. Because if you No, you're just. You may. You might not necessarily. I told you, you are the creative seeds. You may never even teach this. What we need you is to come up with the curriculum, come up with that learning community. So maybe you teach it, but maybe you wouldn't. Right? If you're all English teachers and you're doing something on politics or environmental science or whatever, you might never even have a chance to teach that. But you could develop that so someone else could teach it. Okay? Okay. I just
So are we
want
supposed to be deciding on one right now? Or
one. After you think about, then you're going to go to the second step, which is start negotiating. Which one will you work on? You can't work on all 2 or 3. So negotiate, pick one, and then go from there.
Renewable, sustainable energy.
Political dialogue.
Within the they're competing, they have different priorities. Yeah, some don't want environment, some do want environment. Some want to strip mine the whole country, some want to preserve the whole country. So that's...
What do we focus on the industry more?
Yeah.
Thinking about.
Okay. But the courses we haven't come up with.
Well, yeah, you will here, though. You, and the back you will. Yeah, you will.
That's what I thought. Okay.
You will. All together.
Okay, gotcha. We got to come up with a catchy name.
No, you know, the name will come last, believe me.
Like reading, writing, and wrenches. Do you remember that one, Steve?
Yeah, I
Or
think
do we have to, I think we would need to get up to 2009. That would be essentially, that would be ultimately the kind of the climax.
And then it's easy to stick a course in there
Maybe
once
we
you...
should stick with one of the courses rather than think of the 2 at a time right now and just take it up to a certain...
I would.
Well, I
I
think
do
right
one.
now
I do
what
one
we're talking about
semester.
is US history.
Which is?
So it works when we sort of African American students, because one of the classes is almost
Still working it? Good, okay. Okay. So we obviously, that's too many courses to put together, so you want to just narrow it down. Talk about this, you know, envision, say, what would the world look like if you put a time to it in 100 years?
Right.
And then just pick out, you obviously can't do anything, so you might want to pick out environmentally,
Right.
you know, what would it look like? Culturally, sociological population, you know, what would it look like? And look at demographic trends. And so once you come up with those, when you switch this over and look at the kind of like the ideas, sub-themes, the concepts, then you'll be able to figure out which courses would support that.
Right, okay.
Okay?
So too.
Well, it does work. It does work, but it took work to develop how we're going to do that. I would say because at the beginning, the sociology teacher sort of taught her thing, and then the math said, well, to do this work in sociology, you need to know this in statistics. So they sort of the thing is, basically the math was just supporting. They had a good one with statistics and business, a beginning business course, and they did it right, but they actually developed a business plan, and so they needed to use the statistics. You should, giving you a time cue, you should be, I assume, around if you turn the page over on section 4, if you've chosen a theme by now, you should be sort of fleshing out that theme. You've got a general idea, general topic. You want to start thinking about what ideas would be in it, what sub-themes, go into a little more detail. Activities or something. Once you get to themes and sub-themes, then you'll see what courses you need, right? Because you'll have an idea of what are the ideas we want to do. Well, if I'm going to do that, then I would need to have a course like that. So you can put 2 or 3 courses in there, okay? So that's the easiest way to work it. And then develop what kind of activities, what books would we read, what would we do in the class, what type of assignments, okay? So you have about a half hour to do that. Broad.
Yeah, that's...
So you want to say, like,
Communication.
we're going to look at certain things.
Like communication or economics.
Yeah, it could be communication. I mean, what's going to happen with computers, iPods, phones,
Exactly.
all that kind of stuff. You know, what will that impact?
Yeah.
You know, they keep saying that you wouldn't have anything anymore. You'll just have this little tiny thing. You wouldn't have a computer. They say computers are going to be gone.
Yeah.
You'll have this little handheld thing that will do everything.
would be fun to talk to some other totally outside the box.
about the ways of immigration and how those cultures have changed our society.
Do you think we ought to try to get ourselves like to 3 courses or something?
Well, I'm still hearing that you're not at the courses yet.
We are, we have too many.
Right, so if you limit what is going to be dealt with in this learning community, what are the topics?
I think that could be part of the history. When you link history and poli-sci together, you look at how our system has changed from different ways of immigration. You look at what the 1930s, Middle Eastern, European. I think it's important, but well, yeah. The cultural anthropology, the class itself, you're going to look at Giuliano Marlowe. You're going to look at cultural anthropology. That's a traditional that's my major. Culture anthropology. Yeah. Well, no, because it looks at the history of anthropology, starting with Franz Willis and Margaret Mead. They go out to different cultures, get the information. You could maybe do a topic for 197.
Yeah, cultural anthropology in the class would be too large.
Right, because they have to look at
I think a history class.
Yeah.
Personally, I would think. Yeah, I see that self-identity more as a process that any instructor could incorporate that into that because they would be reflecting for the council. That's the process of deciding. Can't do everything in one course.
We're going to integrate political economy and environmental biology and talk about balance between growth and progress, sustaining our environment in the future, how institutes shape environmental policy, global warming factors.
Good. I don't know anything that's political economy. I never heard of that. Or you're making it?
Well,
you're inventing one.
No, I used to.
You could.
I used to go to school where they taught political economy.
Okay.
It was a department.
Okay, really?
It is sometimes thought of as political economy, but some people have that purist, economy and politics are not integrated, they're separate, but in reality
they are. Okay, well, they're good. Keep it. Yeah, I just said I hadn't heard of it, so that's fine.
The instructor would have to be open to the possibility of, the instructor would have to be open to the possibility of someone being really resistant to approaching this in a mindful way because of their own religious efforts. And some people might find this kind of, they know what it is going into it, but you might find some people taking it to be resistant.
So what is your theme?
Mindfulness and community.
Okay, could you elaborate on that? Because that doesn't mean too much to me yet.
Or through the lens of life?
Like a catchphrase?
No, I don't want a phrase. That sounds like a phrase, but I don't know what that means. So as a theme, you want to give me a topic sentence and thesis statement about. Just tell me what are you going to look at? Mindfulness.
A whole bunch of ideas.
Yeah, so that's what I want you to share. I'm asking you to share them with me.
We've got 3 classes: a yoga class, an English class that's focused on religious, kind of co-listener or whatever.
Yeah, just being able to think about that and manage that in your life. That to me would be a good theme.
Yeah.
And then we're going to do this yoga class. We're going to do a counseling component and
the English religious studies. So the reading.
And those would be the readings.
Yeah.
In the English. Okay. I wouldn't worry. You only put the courses in that you need.
Yeah.
If you had an instructor, a philosophy instructor who knew about yoga and could do that, then you would just need this philosophy of Eastern philosophy or something, and the English class, the readings, and the counseling. You get a chance to read them, and I'm going to leave them up, but I get an idea of it really wasn't much more than an hour of what you could do in an hour and you're not even really thinking, you're just really brainstorming about some of these, and you can sort of see that these with a little more tweaking could easily be things that you would want to offer. So I'll leave them up so we all can read English.
I'm going totally 21st century right now.
What is that, Steve?
And then send it, Steve.
So we can all read English, so we really don't need you to read your poster to us. Right. Okay? But what we would like is for people to get up and give us anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute, and I'm timing. Just generally, and I mean it, no more than a minute, because that would give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's another 10 minutes. My math isn't that good. That would give us and that's all we want. That's all we want. So quickly, we're going to do this. Don't read us the classes. Don't read us the thing. Just generally, what is the theme? What's that main idea that you were focusing in on, okay? That's what we want to see. And then they'll be up there, and people can look at them during lunch. And if they have a question, they can come and ask you, what did you mean by that? Or I'd like to teach that, or whatever. So let's do this. The last one to go up, we'll start with them. CSI Palomar. So real quickly now.
This is ours. Real quickly, we went at it from the perspective of our objective. We were very objective based, and what we wanted to do was to teach our students how to learn and how to think, get them up beyond the literal level into critical thinking, into problem solving, and into making those skills into real life applications and transferring those to their real life skills and possibilities. So you can see this is what we've done here. With all of the things we're trying to get them over, the idea of just, I can't do this. Yes, you can, and we're going to show you how, and we're going to show you, you're going to work a lot of collaborative team learning is going to take place, as well as a lot of collaborative team teaching.
Good. Excellent. Thank you. That was a good role model for the rest of the groups. Excellent role model of short and to the point. Anyone else? I just wanted to start with them because they were last. Who wants to go next? Or am I going to pick? Go. Maria? Go. 60 seconds.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Our idea was to explore the role of the citizen from a cultural perspective. And so we would, how has it changed? How does culture affect what you do as a citizen? I'm kind of lost actually right now.
So the title is American Citizens
Yeah,
Work.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
How technology has affected citizenry, how
Right,
does culture
that was a
affect the
big-
role of the
yeah.
citizen, how ways of immigration has changed the government.
So we were
Okay.
thinking about
It's a work in
how
progress.
the role has changed
Right.
so much because this administration that we have now is really into technology. And the students that we have here at Palomar College are really into technology also. So has the role changed? What's your role? Then we talked about the role of the counselor, helping students find self-identity and explore self-identity and think about, okay, who am I? What are the expectations for my culture? So we tried to bring in disciplines that would help us do that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
My esteemed group, you came up with can you hear me now? We were going to go with can you feel me now, but we were kind of afraid what that would give us. And the idea is to explore through the lens of mindfulness, exploring how to connect oneself to one's community. And so English 50, counseling 120, which is quest for identity and life skills, and then actually having them enroll in a yoga class. Yeah, so kind of getting people out of their comfort zone, and so for the most part. So in English, early readings would deal with yoga, the history of yoga as well as the principles, I guess, of yoga and mindfulness, and a collection of multicultural readings about people in distress and how they cope. So by doing this, they would be applying what they're learning in the counseling class with stress management on coping skills and developing a sense of their own identity. And then related activities will be in the yoga class. We were thinking about field trips to different kinds of yoga practices, but also permit participation in community service to try and get them out with the rest of the community to kind of bring everything together.
Very good. See, that sounds good. I could use some stress reduction.
Fall 2009.
Okay.
That's right.
You're really hard. We did the evolution of political movements in the United States, and what we tried to do was, it was rather large, and we didn't know, okay, well, this is big. So we tried to tie it to the starting of democracy and the meandering down to individual rights, the granting of individual rights. So we started here at the American Revolution when the country sort of forms, and then we take it out to the Civil War, and when we see the country sort of fall apart again, and then coming back together. And our time sequencing might have been a little messy here. We didn't have any historians, and we couldn't Google, no, we had internet. So we went to voting rights and some marginalization, and tried to remember the amendment, couldn't. Unions, and kind of blended out to socialism and communism, and sort of just watching what happens as our democracy and the rights move. And then we figured we could throw all of these classes into it, and that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, good. See, you just want, in an hour, you just want to get the core that you could work on, but you have an idea and you can see what classes might go in there. So that's really what this is doing, getting you to think a little outside that box. Okay, so I bet none of these exist in your catalog, right? But they could. Who's next? Communicating? Are we going?
Our subject is pretty broad still. I don't think we narrowed it down enough. But what we wanted to get to eventually, communication through all the technological devices, has changed the way people do research, the way they read, the way they write with their U instead of YOU. And how that would affect students changing research methods and study skills. You can incorporate a counselor into that to help them learn to study in that area, and how reading and writing has changed across the curriculum with that. But we're still pretty broad here. We'd have to narrow this down.
Yeah, and that's what exactly, if you had more time, you decided, we like this, we're excited, and that's what you would do. You would just focus it down. But that's good. The whole idea of change and communication in all the multiple ways. Excellent. Okay, here's sustainable growth.
All right. Well, we wanted to combine political science with environmental biology. Talk about how environmental policy is shaped by what happens in various political capitals like Washington and so on, and how the web connects. You can see some of our key ideas and how counselors are involved. There are supposedly going to be a lot of jobs in this area, maybe some job counseling, some self-awareness about how the student fits into the overall picture of the environment. Lots of field trips, taking students out to see that wind farms aren't really that ugly, like the political discourse suggests, and things like that. Just getting them, tying those two themes together.
Good.
I want to read a really good textbook.
I just want to read a really good textbook. That's good. That would probably, that would probably draw so many people that are really into that. Very good. Okay.
I guess
You're up? No, we still have two more. Insider? I'm just going down because no one's jumping up. So.
Okay, well, becoming an insider, we were thinking about people, joining different communities, and first of all, having to know what a community is, and looking at communities in terms of, being a student, being in a specific career, all these different communities, and kind of studying these communities, and then, looking at the values of the group and the language. A lot of things that you can bring into that, and then ultimately leading it to the point of them looking at their own communities and those they have chosen to be in and those they've not chosen to be in. And really it's a kind of a transferable skill that wherever they go in life, being able to kind of step back and observe, study what it is that's going on around them, and how do I fit in, how do I become successful in whatever this group is that I'm in.
Good. And you can really turn that right back in on itself because they're already in a community.
Mm-hmm.
So any one of the, how do I succeed? Well, are you doing it in this community?
Mm-hmm.
You keep bringing it back to what I'm doing now. Yeah, it'd be really interesting. Okay, and the last one, what does it mean to be Black?
Yes, so ours would be an African American themed learning community. The Black is in quotation marks to indicate the constructiveness and malleability of identity. And so be historically anchored, what are actually the historical roots of Black identity. And then the English and counseling components would focus more on the contemporary repercussions. What does it then mean actually in the workplace, in culture, popular culture, in the movies, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So
Good, really
that was a fairly simple fit, actually.
Good.
As far as
Well,
the
that's
three
good.
disciplines
When,
are concerned.
that's not bad when things fit and it's a natural fit. That's good. It's telling you something. Okay, well, I applaud you all. That was, I don't know whether you can recognize it, but I can because I've done this with numerous groups. That's a really amazing job you did here. You really have some things that are wouldn't need too much tweaking to find some instructors, develop it a bit more, pick out the text, you know, and really take it. Say, okay, we're going to see if we can offer something like that. So you get an idea of what you can do. And the thing is now, you can work with using that exercise. You can get a group of faculty together. You know how to do it. The instructions are there. So, you know, you don't always need to call in an outsider. You could get a bunch of faculty together and walk them through this process, and they'll do exactly this. And I hope this gave you a little sort of more of a concrete sense when we were talking about, well, how do we ever go about putting this together if someone doesn't tell me that it's going to be English, reading, math, and, you know, they don't, but if I want to do it, or I'm interested in how could I work with some other faculty to sort of brainstorm what we could possibly put together. Okay? And these are all really doable.